I feel like everybody's right and everybody's wrong.
100%. Why is this important? Why are we even going here? He's helped a lot of guys. He's also not had success with a lot of guys.
Come in with a purpose, and they're very intentional with what they do and how they do it.
From the majors to the sandlot, baseball and softball share space in one place. Welcome to the farm system.
Fellas, and the ladies, welcome back to another episode of The Farm. We are back. Kodee Martin, Tankerson Martin. He's also here. He stacked potatoes with his Lakers jersey on.
Hanging out.
Code, we are into the season,
Bro.
right? And there's
Yes,
been
we
some
are.
things happening. We're gonna run through that. Why don't you give us the intro?
First of all,
who's been doing the thing?
First of all, a lot of people doing their thing. But
Yeah.
the one that's just crazy is I saw this thing on Twitter, on X,
On X.
that Mookie Betts is literally leading almost every offensive category in the MLB currently.
Yeah.
He is off to a start.
Yeah. So my fantasy if you missed I think it was the last podcast, huh?
I think so.
Yeah, I think I put we had we had to give context, right? You gotta play one, bench one, cut one.
Mm-hmm.
It was Acuna,
Mookie,
and Trout,
and
right?
Trout's not playing bad either.
Trout ain't playing bad either, and then Acuna was hurt,
Yeah.
right? Starting the year, so he'll get a little later start. But man, if I was on a fantasy team, Mookie just lost me literally both, right? I should have switched my roster because Acuna's hurt.
He's not even
I have to
like
cut
that.
him
Yeah.
now. You know what I'm saying? Sign Trout, and Mookie should have been starting.
They said so Mookie's hitting 500. He's got 5 home runs, which is that's just crazy enough to talk about.
Yeah. He's
11 RBIs, 14 runs. His
Yep.
OBP is 605, slugging
plays.
1.167,
Wow.
OPS 1.772,
Oh my goodness.
15 hits, and that's the stats that they show.
Wow. But if you
That's
really
insane.
think about it though, right? We talked about this at the beginning of the year, right? You look at the Dodgers lineup. That 1-2-3 is ridiculous, right?
Oh,
so you got Mookie, Ohtani, Freeman, right?
Yeah.
And then what's
Will
his name?
Smith.
Will Smith,
Yeah,
who-
he rakes.
under the radar,
Yeah,
right? Because even when you told me his stats, I was like, bro, I didn't know he hit that good.
yeah, bro, he is
Yeah,
bomb.
what was his stats again? Would you? Do you
Let me
Yeah, look
pull
it
him
up.
up.
We
I just
don't
know
misrepresent.
offensively for a catcher,
did
he
pretty good.
is in a pretty good.
No, yeah, he was doing pretty good. Yeah, but they're 1-2-3. I mean, you got 3 MVPs, prior MVPs, and then the former MVP, literally from last year, obviously with Ohtani coming onto the team. You got all the MVPs stacked up back to back to back. Like, who are you going to pitch to, right? And then if you let Mookie get on, then you got the big boys coming up behind him too. So it's like Mookie's getting some pitches to hit.
Mhm.
That lineup, they're gonna have to figure out some ways to get through that. I mean, that 1-2-3 is probably the best in baseball. I mean, how could it not be? It's got to be the best in baseball, right?
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah, I mean, so 2022, he hit 24 pumps, 26 doubles, and batted 260, which, again, he's a catcher. Let's just
Yeah.
give context to all that. And he's a pretty good catcher, too, defensively.
That was 2022, you said?
Yep, 2023 hit 261, so about the same, a little more on the average. He had 87 RBIs 2022, 76, which, again, still pretty impressive.
How many homers
19 bombs and
Okay.
21 doubles,
Okay.
121 hits.
So not as extreme as you said, but he's
Yeah.
still a pretty good hitter.
Yeah, no, I mean, he was 25, 24 bombs the 2 years, 21, 22. Last year he was a little down. A lot of RBIs, though. I mean, 87 RBIs is, again, too.
Yeah.
You put him in
they
that role.
got a decent hitting coach over there too. He's all right.
Yeah.
You know, that guy.
So,
And then also, shout out to my boy Van Soyak. But also too, the other, and again, I'm trying to think of every 1-2-3 in baseball. Obviously, I'm very aware of Houston's, where you got Altuve, and then this year they're going with Alvarez,
yeah, Jordan.
and then
Tucker, right?
and then Breggs.
Oh, Bregman's
Breggs,
in
unless they've changed
Yeah.
the lineup recently.
Yeah.
So that 1-2-3 is also
Yeah,
been a bit,
that's
but
Rangers,
but
obviously.
with that being said, though, the first series against the Yankees, Alvarez and Breggs didn't hit very well, either one of them, and so the Dodgers did hit, right? Freeman, that was that one game. I know, it's a sore subject because it's about the Cardinals, but they put the hammer on them. You know what I'm saying? They were swinging it.
that game.
Yeah, and also too impressive as well. Like we talked about, I know we kind of skimmed past it, but the Yankees played good, and I know that's my squad, but the Yankees played good against Houston. Notoriously, I know, is they struggle against Houston, right? So, again, I think just overall, they had a pretty good series. They looked pretty good overall. Volpe was, he doesn't know how to say his name.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's playing
He played well.
playing good. Dude, he looks like, I mean, obviously, I'm pretty sure he's sharing A-Rod's number. I mean, it's not like A-Rod's number was retired.
Yeah.
But, yeah, when I saw a picture of him, like, they look, like, very similar,
They
too, in
said,
pictures, a lot of the pictures.
I want to say they said opening day or the opening weekend, the only other shortstop in Yankees history to have that many times on base or something like that was Jeter. It's like,
Yeah.
again, him playing his role.
And he,
you know?
well, and also, too, last year, he was kind of, struggling, had some defensive errors early, and also, too, it looks like he made some subtle changes in his setup and some of the things, and some of the people were kind of talking about some of the things with, like, what was his focus this offseason. So, and then again, it's early, right? Anybody can play good for one series. Some people literally were stroking in, like, 2 weeks ago, like, in the spring training, and then all of a sudden now they're struggling or something, like, right? It's like, again, it's all about, like, when you start measuring all the time, right? And I think that's so interesting for hitters all the time, too, is just, like, understanding, like, you're not going to be hitting all the time. And, of course, we want to. Right. But at the end of the day, like, that's the part of being a hitter. Some people start the season hot. Some people end the season hot.
Yeah.
Some people are like David Freese, right? And I feel like, isn't that weird? I feel like I'm like aging now. It's like David Freese. Like, a lot of people don't, a lot of players, like, there's probably a bunch of 12-year-olds in here that don't even know who the hell he is.
No.
So yeah, I mean, some players that, like, literally just get hot during, off season. You know who else looks nasty? And again, shout out to another pretty good hitting coach. Is over there with the Rangers, Donnie Eckert, gangster, is that, what's his name? That hits all the bombs.
Garcia?
Yes.
Yeah. Adolis Garcia?
Yeah. His finish is different. He has more of that, like, stick. He's, like, holding his angle a little bit longer. And, I've seen some balls he's hitting. I'm like, man. Also, too, he looks, I know this is crazy to say. He looks bigger than he did last year. So he put some more size.
Yeah, don't get the people started.
I know. The people are already getting riled up on social media. But my boy definitely put some extra size on. Probably like another 10 pounds at least or something like that. I mean, my boy
another
looks
thing
big.
that's crazy is the Rangers. They got that Wyatt Langford.
Yeah,
he got drafted last year, did his short season or whatever, and he's on the big league roster.
Yeah.
I think he DH'd and batted fifth his first game. I was like, man.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Maybe I'm misremembering who he is specifically. Didn't he come up last year, though? I thought he played up in a couple games, if I'm thinking of the right person.
He might.
Because he's a big righty, right? Like a big, like, kind of like
he's
stocky, lankier,
yeah,
though.
He's stocky.
Yeah, he's got some size on him.
22 years old. That's crazy.
Did he play last year from the stats?
Gotta pull that up.
Tank is just really having time.
Yeah, my boy's out.
My boy, just find a way to. He could sleep anywhere. That guy didn't play last year.
Nope.
I think I'm thinking of a different guy, but yeah, no, definitely some hot starts there. Harper hit like 3 jacks the other day.
Yeah, that was like a milestone moment, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like, first person in however long to do that, like in the same game or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if it's 3 home runs because obviously I've seen people that have hit 3 home runs semi recently. But I know, he looked good. Someone made a comment too, which I agree with too, is like, man, you can see when his front side's locked in. Like, dude, his front side looks like it's in concrete when that game. If you go look back when he's not spinning out his front side, when he blows out his front side sometimes, kind of gets like Soto-ish and like will spin and yank off balls when Soto's bad. Very similar.
Yeah, I think Bo Bichette kind of does that too. He'll lose that front side and everything.
Yeah, when he loses it, when that thing's in the ground, all of a sudden rotating to that front side, things get nasty.
Yeah, no, there's definitely been some cool highlights to start the year. I mean, I'm a Cardinals fan, so I'm watching everybody else highlights. Now, so hey,
how's Arenado started?
I mean, not good.
Yeah, I haven't even looked.
Not good at all.
I
mean, he had a good game.
I know he had a good year like 2 years ago.
Yeah, last year was all right.
Last year was like, eh.
Yeah, last year was all right. Goldschmidt started off pretty well.
Yeah, homers. He was his first home run.
Yeah. What do we got?
I'm trying to think of anybody else, the other teams that I've been watching. I don't know the record. Marlins seem like they got a good buzz over there at minimum. I don't know the record right now, but I know that like just has a good. I was even listening to Jazz kind of talk about it. He's been a little outspoken, that guy.
Yeah.
He's been out there talking about all kinds of stuff, like opening pulling back the thing a little bit.
Yeah.
One of the comments that I thought he made that was actually pretty interesting. I was listening to a podcast that he did the other day with one of like a former. Hosmer. Hosmer has like a little podcast with, I don't know if it's his podcast or he's just in it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But in any case, he was kind of talking about, Jazz was kind of talking about like baseball compared to like other sports, right? And he's like, don't be wrong, like LeBron and like all these other guys. He's talking about, basketball and football and all these things, but he was talking about like how in baseball there's like this seriousness that like in other sports is like more playful and like they're out there like just balling basically is kind of like his perspective. And I thought it was an interesting take, right? Because, again, obviously baseball is very traditional. There's like all these things where it's, again, in the last couple of years, obviously the bat flips and some of the, and I think the World Baseball Classic kind of gave us that different view of like fans getting way more involved and things like that too. Also, a lot of something that most people don't know, one of the things that baseball is actually battling right now, the MLB is actually battling, is that their average fan is like I think it's like 55-year-old, and I think specifically like 55-year-old white guy, right? And it's like, like they're trying to figure out how to make the game like the fans younger, right? And it's also barrier of entry with the sport, right? Like getting the game back local is a big deal, right? Like because you think about club ball, all these other things, like people are paying a lot of money to have these kids travel all the way around. But also too, I get why it kind of went there. I think it's going to come back a little bit more back to center because one, it's ridiculous how much money people are paying and then playing somebody that they could have played down the street, like back home. And then the competition, even who they played, like great, you played for somebody from another state, but that team is just as good as someone down the street from you guys, right? So there's some of that. And then also, I think the other part with that too is that back in the day, I get it because you needed more like exposure and you needed like the coach is not going to come all the way to California or whatever, right? When they're some mid-level college or, you're not one of their top prospects or whatever that is. So they started kind of changing that up a little bit more, that I thought was big. Yeah. And I think the difference, nowadays that's going to be different is obviously, social media has changed things dramatically, right? Where you can get a lot of video. It's easy now. All the games are recorded. They're, categorized. Game Changer has also helped a ton, obviously with that. And, it's a lot easier. And then also too, metrics and all the ways you can collect data and like all these other things. It's like, obviously seeing a player play is important, but also too, again, like with Game Changer, you can literally tune in and watch an amateur game, pretty often. So it's like, you can kind of watch all that and just to be square, it's just not in the budget for some of the smaller colleges or, even mid-majors, all that stuff, right? To go and like, think about it. There's all these guys are recruiting every single year. They can't go and watch. And then also too great, you're there for one game, right? Like it just changed things dramatically. So I think it'll be interesting to see over the next couple of years if the game kind of gets back a little bit more local. I'd love to see, again, a lot more like club ball leagues or whatever, just local. I don't know if it goes back to like the Little League model. I think that there's, I think we're
like probably a hybrid or something.
Yeah. Because the Little League World Series is it's crazy that they created that. Because if they didn't have that right now, I don't think that the Little League would be really bad.
No.
Yeah.
Me and Taylor
especially
were talking
here in Vegas.
We were talking about like the UFC fights and like how well the particular fighters market themselves, but they also have the freedom to market themselves in a way that some sports don't allow.
For sure.
Dana White obviously. There's some stuff that they can and can't do for sure. But, they have a lot of freedom when it comes to building their personal brand. I know like the most recent one that we talked about was Sugar Sean O'Malley. It's like he has a podcast. He has a vlog channel on YouTube.
He's on a lot of other people's
he's
stuff.
Partnering with
TikTok he's
all
big.
sorts of different brands. And like he's getting his personal brand and name out there. And I've literally heard him saying that he would take a fight in a particular country so he can reach a different audience. It's like he's able to do that where, I think Mookie, obviously great player. I think he's really one of the only ones that's currently playing that actively does a podcast, right?
And
where
he uses his road trips, like whoever's playing that week, they'll grab somebody or whatever.
Interview him, and it's entertaining. It's
sure.
like people tune into those and listen to them, and sometimes they don't even talk that much about baseball. They'll just talk about their life at the hotel and on the road and their families and this and that. But you're just getting to know them as players, and you're making them human rather than creating this barrier between the fan and the players, which. Ultimately, I think that's
the veil a little bit.
Yeah, I think that is a big reason why the younger generation does like UFC,
Yep.
NBA is a big one that they let
Yeah.
their. I mean, they all have their own shoe. I mean,
Yeah.
there's very few, if any, anymore baseball players that have their own cleats. You know,
Yeah.
it's like everybody's like, oh, you just copped the new LeBrons. Like that's a big deal for a lot of people. The new Jordans, that's a big deal for a lot of people. But there's no like, you just got the new Betts. You just got the new, Pujols. Like there's some bats, but
Yeah.
it's not.
And some glove models and
Yeah.
like some other things like with that. But I agree with you too that like, yeah, I think because again, the fan feedback, right, is like they're kind of dictating the game where you got a very old school generation, which is like, well, if you're good, they'll find you. Don't like self promotion, like, oh, look at this self promoter. And it's like, well, again, like they're a business. Like it is different back in the day, right? It's like asking Pepsi not to market themselves, right? It's silly, right? Like they are a business. And also too, you've seen the biggest athletes in the world, on the other side of that, right? Like, when they go about like their brand deals or, again, like I remember, again, like I think it's so funny, specifically if you look at like someone like LeBron or something like that, right? Like, again, you could agree with some things that he does. It doesn't agree, again, likewise with anybody, right? All the stuff. But is like fans and people that really enjoy, like, like Taco Tuesday become like such a big thing for him. Like, it made it into a song. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like there's some of these things that, again, like gives different brand outreach and like cross marketing and all those things. And also too, indirectly, and this is where the older generation misses this part, it helps the MLB. It helps the NBA. It helps the UFC for Sean O'Malley to have a bigger brand and pull people into the sport or do whatever, right? Because he's going to these other places. And again, if you look at like somebody like we talked about like Gary Vee, and he's talking about like, again, for example, like he's a big CEO for a marketing company that they market for, Pepsi and all these other, big, massive brands. But he's also doing like garage sales, and making content like garage sale. And they're like, how does that overlap with like what you do, right? And it's like, and again, he talks about all the time. It's like sometimes he's talking about like baseball cards or whatever. But then the other guy that's also, who else is also interested in like baseball cards or whatever, it's like a CEO of another company that goes, oh yeah, what does this guy do? Oh wait, he's a marketing guy. It's like, and if you think about it's like old school networking, right? Like old school networking was the same thing. You might have met. Maybe you went to your wife's event or whatever, and then you met this guy, John. Well, then later on, 3 years later, you're like, oh yeah, John owns a marketing company. And then, yeah, we should hit up John and blah, 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 blah. You didn't meet about marketing. You met about something else. Maybe your kids both play baseball. Maybe your kids blah, 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 but he does this, right? It's just like old school networking, but again, on a different way. And I know it's like changed, but if you kind of open your mind to that other perspective, like, again, the same thing we were talking about, when I made that clip the other day with like Tank or whatever, right? And it's like you made a joke. You're like, bro, you're not even posting about baseball, bro. And I was like, we were just making that funny, but it's like, again, like those posts and stuff like reach a different audience where, again, it's okay. Like I understand, like not everybody, like again, like Gary Vee or some of these other guys, not everybody's into baseball cards or maybe not into this or that, but it reaches a different audience and like also expands the game because this is the other thing too, is like you want also too, you got to understand when you're looking at the numbers and all those things and like what the MLB is doing and what they're trying to do with the game and people don't want anything to change. It's like, no, you don't understand. And like, if you don't, the only thing constant is change. And if you don't change things and adapt, bro, the NBA is adapted. Yeah. The NFL is adapted. The UFC is adapted. Right. And it's like, and in some of these things, like for example, like the 3-point line wasn't a thing at one point. Yeah. Right. So it's like, again, opening these things up and like changing certain rules or doing whatever, right? Like even too, everybody wants to smash on the NFL, obviously with the rules that they make for like tackling and all the stuff, right? Like let's get to the business side of why they're doing these things. I get it, right? Again, some of the people are like, oh, they want these people to be smashed. It's like, it sounds good, but like when Patrick Mahomes gets caught with a nasty tackle and he no longer plays the game anymore because he's got some brutal injury, right? Or again, these players on the field are not just, like that's a human being on the field. They're not just some entertainment object. Yeah. These guys are having to deal with massive brain injuries and other things when they're done playing years after. There's a big suicide rate with guys because of the brain injuries that these guys end up having when they're playing. So they came out with all these rules and new helmets and all this other stuff, right? And there's part of like, again, like what games you're always balancing what's fun and like also, again, entertaining and also looking after some of these players. So I think it's interesting again, like with baseball, where they're trying to, and again, if you look at teams like Savannah Bananas or stuff like that, right? Like I think there's a lot to learn. Don't get me wrong. Do I think it's that? Do I think that MLB is going to turn into Savannah Bananas? No, I think it's its own niche. But I think if you look at the Savannah Bananas and like what makes them successful, and then go and look at like Cuban leagues and Dominican leagues and Puerto Rican leagues and all these things, and you go look why their fans are so engaged and why the fans are so rabid like fans, and why there's young fans, right? There's young players that are really into baseball and like through and through. And not that there isn't any here in the States, of course, right? But it's just taking that in, that the average fan of baseball is way older, right? Is way older than it is in other sports. And that's a problem that the MLB is trying to solve, right? Which is, how do we do that? And also to like, also not be known as just this very super traditional game. Like, it's great, right? And there's aspects of the things we want to keep, but also too, like gloves are not cheap. Bats are not cheap, right? Like the game has gotten really expensive, right? We're not getting a football and me and the boys go down to the park and we can just throw the thing around, right? Like, it's not basketball. You show up at a random basketball court and it's just you and you can just shoot and you're good. Yeah. It's like, bro, if I toss a ball in the air and I hit it and I only got one baseball, bro, but that one baseball, again, 45 baseballs is expensive, right? So it's like, even if I'm self-tossing, hitting off the tee, and then also too, all the fields, because they cost so much to maintenance them, they want to lock all the public fields and not let people hit on the public fields. Basketball courts, that's not a problem, right? Football, I can go to some random grass area and set it up and like, let's play, throw some passes and stuff, right? Yeah. We need one football and we're good to go. Where baseball, like, okay, I'm going to go play defense. What are you going to do? Field it with your hands? Like, what are you going to do? Like, you know what I'm saying? There's only so much you can do. So it makes it the barrier of entry to play baseball for cheap, like, and too as well, right? It's not I constantly will keep a football in the truck and it'll be like, like, we might just stop and
so easy.
Yeah. But for baseball, it's not like that. No. You know what I'm saying? You don't just randomly stop and go, hey, let's just go play some baseball real quick. Yeah. Right? Like,
odds of someone else having a glove. Yeah. 1 to none.
Exactly. Right. And then you're carrying multiple gloves, and then gloves ain't cheap. Yeah. No. Right? It's just not like it was.
They wear
right?
down. And...
Yeah. Yeah. I was actually interesting. It's so funny. I thought this was hilarious last night. I was with my my nephew and my niece at my brother's house, and my niece goes, they put on Sandlot, and she's like, do you know this movie? I'm like, do you know this movie? like Sandlot? Come on, girl. I was giving her a hard time, but it got me thinking too, because obviously Sandlot, like, kind of is that old small town feel, like, again, like the boys getting together and just playing in the park and all this stuff. Like, bro, when's the last time you rolled past a field with no coach on the field and boys just playing baseball?
No, never.
And you still see people playing football. Oh yeah. You still, again, like, same thing. Like, you got Thanksgiving comes around, like, turkey ball's coming. People, you know what I'm saying? Like, or I used to be with my grandparents, like our grandparents' house, we're out front running routes. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're doing other stuff. Again, it's just the barrier of entry is like, again, you show up to your grandma's house and one person has a football, y'all can play. Yeah. Right? You got one bat. No, well, this one's too big. This one's too small. Yeah. Oh, okay. And then also too, the bat's $500. Like, again, like, you got your gloves, all the other things. It's just different, right? And and if you do, and that if you're walking around and you're like, yo, I don't know what you're talking about because I see all these people doing it, like, that's awesome. Like, I want to know what's going on in that area, but in general, it's not the case, right? Yeah. It's just, and so, there's so much, parts of that which I think are so. Just interesting, again, along with it is like solving those problems too, because they're not easy problems to solve. No. Well,
I mean, you think golf, I mean, they kind of just did that when they split to the PGA and the Live. I don't know how much you paid attention to that. I did. But again, I would assume the average audience for PGA was pretty old.
Yeah, older.
Yeah. I don't know the number, but I'm going to guess just off the top of my head. But golf, I mean, if you're just on social media, it has been a really big deal for young adults, like freshly out of college, in college. Golf's a really big deal. Yeah, well,
especially if you look at and I have no idea if this has played anything into it, but you would think things like Top Golf would really bring in a different audience, right? Because it's a way, it's another thing, or like like putt putt, like any of the stuff, like, and that's cool here in Vegas. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, the big one.
They're gonna they're gonna open up a big.
It's supposed to be indoor. Next month or this month.
Is it?
Up. Yeah,
wow,
like April
timing
something.
on that was crazy. Yeah. But that'd be pretty cool, right? Along with, but things like Top Golf, and then also Top Golf has a competitor now. I don't know if you knew that. They just
the Atomic Golf.
Yeah, there's another company that's doing the same, basically same setup.
Yeah.
So that'll be pretty cool too. So again, those things like that like really help golf, right? Because it's like sometimes you don't need to capture the whole thing. Like nobody wants to well, not nobody. Most people don't want to go play 18 holes.
Yeah.
Right? Even people that play golf, a lot of them play like,
Yeah.
front half or the back half or whatever, right? And then like, playing 18 holes takes a long time. It's a good amount of time, right? So, and then, or again, even in the amateur like side, right? Like we're riding in golf carts, like they're doing other stuff, right? Where I think that things like Top Golf, like shoot, when me and you played when we were out of town, right?
Yeah.
It's like again, we're just driving down the street and I'm like, bro, you want to go play Top Golf? You're like, yeah,
so
bro, let's go,
Yeah.
right? It's simple, right? Where baseball, like in golf, there captured a part of the game, but not the full game, and also created a different game. Like a different game, like that's not really golf,
Yeah,
right?
came
Like,
within the game.
yeah, let's be honest. Me and you were over there just smashing balls, like
Trying
me
to.
more than anything. You're just over there just trying to freaking swing as hard as I could. You're over there actually know what you're doing with some clubs. But yeah, and I think again that's a different thing. So I think baseball's so traditional, we don't think of it like that, right? Like imagine if there was a place where, and again, there is that one business that came out where they have like the hit tracks and the little ball, like they hit into the simulator, right? And it's like that. What was the dugout or something like that? Or
I think so. Something like that. It's down in Texas, I know.
Yeah. So the idea, kind of a Top Golf idea for baseball.
But then you even go into that and it's like you're hitting into a screen.
Simulator.
Yeah, it's a simulator.
Top Golf, you get to see the ball go.
Actually go.
And it's like you're hitting it to a target.
Yeah.
It's not a simulator. Well, I mean, it tracks the ball.
It tracks it, but you're actually watching the ball live.
Yeah.
And
you're outside. It's cool.
And then also too, like anytime you just make the ball move, like it shoots the ball up out of the ground or whatever. Like it's just harder than a ball sitting still on the tee. Like people already struggle enough in Top Golf when the ball's just sitting still.
Yeah. And I get that. I get that too. That the other part with it is just like, sometimes you're constrained by the sport itself, right? Like where certain sports, like for example, one of the biggest reasons, I actually took a sports marketing class in college. Shout out to my boy Hans Nickel was my instructor. He's legit over there. He taught a bunch of classes over there at the time. I think he's at Wichita or something like that. I don't know. But in any case, and when I was at Sterling College, we used to talk about like why certain sports were so big, and we made predictions. By the way, my prediction was that UFC was going to blow up at the time. At the time, people were like, UFC, you think? I'm like, bro, that definitely blew up, right? And my take on that was, bro, that's been UFC. It actually was not new. It was a spinoff of what we used to do back in Roman times, right? Like they used to fight lions. They used to have gladiators fight against each other. And my prediction, the reason I thought that is it was just so outside the norm. Like how often do you see two grown men fight? It's just rare, right? I mean, again, matter, I guess, the neighborhood that you're in or whatever, but in general, right, in comparison to the general public, right, seeing that happen and these guys that are trained fighters like with it, right, it's more like gladiator type move, right? It's something outside the norm. It's intriguing, like all the things. And then also, but we talked about why why soccer is the biggest like sport in the world, right? And the reason, like, because again, here in America, like soccer isn't the biggest sport, but like in the world, soccer is the biggest sport by far.
Yeah, 100%.
Right, like they crush. Right, you've seen in the stadiums how many people they can fit. It's insane.
Yeah,
right. We don't do that here in the States, right?
No.
But like, if you look at that, right? But again, like, it's the lowest point of entry, like cost wise. Like, you could have one ball. Right, you could have one ball, and even two. Like, you should see what these people are making soccer balls out of. Like, some people are playing like with like things of lettuce. I mean, they'll make it out of a soccer, and then like it's just the cheapest sport to like actually play in, and you need the least amount of equipment, right?
Yeah.
If you really want to play football, right? I mean, obviously you can run around with all the stuff, but if you're really playing football, you got to have all the gear, you got to have all the stuff, right?
You'll get hurt.
Yeah, all this stuff, right? So soccer, for example, it's like again, like what do you got? Cleats, shin pads,
Yeah.
and the ball.
Well, a lot of them will just play barefoot.
Yeah.
They'll run around on the grass barefoot.
Yeah. But yeah, so then if you really think about it, it's like, okay, you can definitely, obviously it can helps to have shins.
Yeah.
But like if you don't have shins, right, like y'all still play, do your thing, right?
Yeah.
So again, when you look at that from a sport perspective, the cost and point of entry is a big deal for families. And especially if you're going to try out some sports, right? It's like, oh, we could try this sport, we could try this sport, we could try this sport. It's like, baseball's not cheapest. And if the kid, even when the kid's like, and then also too, you fail so much,
Mm-hmm.
right? So many other sports, at least you're running around, you get to touch the ball a lot more. You get to be involved. Like there's a lot more interaction where it's like, bro, you can go to baseball and like not get a ball hit you all day and you don't get a hit. You swing and miss a whole bunch of times and like, it's hard. Or you square one up and guy catches it. It's a sport that's, there's a lot of failure that involved. So it's not from that perspective. And also too, there's a lot of sitting around, right? So for young kids,
that's tough.
It's tough, right? To be in the outfield. You see the videos of the kids sitting out in the outfield, picking grass, doing other things, right? And this is a sport I love, right? Sport you love, right? I get all those things. But in reality, right, these are the real challenges that the MLB is like up against, right? That they're trying to like, you got to remember that's the highest level of the sport, but it's affected by their fans and like how many people are interested and how many people are going to the games. And that's why they cut down the game times and why they put the pitch clock and why they did this stuff. They're trying to make the game shorter, right? They're trying to keep people engaged. And it's just different than obviously that's why those changes have been happening is like, you got to look at the bigger picture that like, even though you look at MLB and you're like, oh, they're a giant, right? Like, but like, I mean, at the same time,
the people watching those games are the families, the parents, the kids.
It is massive. But even too, just like big businesses, right? At one point, people were saying Blockbuster can never go away. You know what I'm saying? At one point, there's some big industries. I was actually thinking about this the other day, or not thinking about this. I watched some on this the other day about how they were talking about how on, I think it was a Joe Rogan podcast. They were talking about how this. I don't know if you knew this is actually a pretty interesting thing. So the houses that have you walk up to, it's like brick housing and you like walk up the stairs to get to the house.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. And so kind of like where that came from was like people had horses. Mm-hmm. People had horses and the horses would be, crapping everywhere. And basically the thing is like those houses were built back then. And then they started doing like the horse problem was such a bad thing back in the day. They started trying to tax it and tax it more and tax it more and tax it more to have these horses. But then what really turned things around that actually made things change is like Henry Ford came out with the car. And then people just, instead of trying to sit there and tax people not have horses, right? Like they needed a way to get around. They just got a different invention that came around, right? But because of that also too as well, when the industries changed and they started learning about, this is me being a nerd with like history stuff of how things change. I just think it's interesting is that the overnight, like some of these bigger industries of how they were creating power at the time, then all of a sudden when these new inventions came out of how they could harness energy and all this stuff, all of a sudden like industries dried up like boom, boom, right? So I think about that. Like there's different sports being invented, right? Like for example, like bro, I'm going to go my sports marketing mind going back into this. I think that because it's already happened, it's been on TV, but I think it will be a bigger sport here at one point. I think pickleball is really coming, bro.
Yeah. I mean, you can play it at any age. I mean, even like you go by the park when we were driving by earlier.
And it's really cheap, right?
Easy.
It's really cheap.
Yeah, I mean,
they don't have enough courts.
Yeah.
Bro, I'm telling you, I see people sitting there waiting, trying to work in on like
every
all ages, old, young.
Yep.
Bro, like how many players we got that love pickleball?
Oh, every single one of them, you bring it up and they're like, oh, I'll play. Oh, what's up? What's up? And then too, like we just drove by in the middle of the day on a Thursday. The courts were full. And like it was older people, but they were full. And then tonight is probably gonna be younger people. It's gonna be full.
And older people. Like I'm telling you, like bro, I'll be over by my house, like little small park in Illinois. They know where all the pickleball courts. I bet you there's apps that show you where the pickleball courts are now.
Probably.
Pickleball is a big deal. There's businesses that are open up that's just pickleball, right? And again, like it's like tennis or whatever. It's like and then also too, I've seen competitive pickleball, and I'm like, like,
get after it.
I mean, think about it, right? Some really good athletes playing pickleball. I mean, me and you go play some pickleball, we go get into, you know what I'm saying? You can have some, and then there's somebody on the other side that's just like that. It's just like, man, like, it could get really competitive, and I could see that being a bigger sport, in the future, right? And it's like that's more of like probably like the last 4 years that's really started to pick up some steam.
Yeah, I was gonna say, even. Really, I didn't even know about it until like 2 years ago. Yeah, I
started playing it during COVID. So, COVID was a big thing where I just started playing with it a lot more. Me and Taylor, we had a pickleball court right next to the house, and again, like, dude, paddles and a ball. Easy. Paddles on a ball. That's really all you need, bro. Yeah. 2 people, paddles and a ball.
Yeah.
And also too, even if you didn't have a net, like bro, you could put something in between you guys. You could pop it back and forth. Again, it's cheaper than a ping pong table, right? And again, and you're more back and forth and all the stuff. And like, I think it's the same thing. Is like pickleball, and again, just really high. It's crazy the age groups it grabs. Very broad.
Oh,
also,
broad.
golf, for example, people play for a really long time.
Right.
When's the last time most people have played baseball? You usually stop at like 22 at max.
Yeah.
Max.
Yeah.
Max. And that's usually when you're top 3%, 5% of the world, right?
And most of the parents here, I mean, they're like, oh, I played till high school and then I stopped. I just love it.
Yeah. Again, after high school, it's like, and then even too, it's like after that, and also it's a difficult sport to play when you get older, right? Like throwing and all that stuff, swinging a bat, like running around the bases is a lot. Pickleball or something like that, right? It's like less. It's like you don't need to be, and you can play it for a lot longer. Like again, golf, for example, too. It's like golf, I think, is even more because it's more of a skill too, and like obviously they have the different things where they move up the handicaps and all the things that they do too. So just different courses and different levels and stuff too. But I just again bring some context to like what, like in baseball, like the things that they're up against and what their problems that they're trying to solve, right? It's like, okay, how do we do this? Like, they try to launch like RBI programs and like stuff like that. And again, it's just the other problems are real issues that are out there, right? And like, also too, you're fighting against some giants too, like Perfect Game and some of these groups that are like, again, like that's become massive businesses and also showcases, and they've helped a lot of people, right? And so the market's always ever flowing, right. But it's some of the things that like, what that turns into, I think is going to be pretty interesting, like going forward. I think now I'm going to tell you guys an insider secret. Kodee, from the first point of the year last year, picked the World Series winner, right? So he's won. He's 1-for-1 now. Yeah. Right. So my boy made his bet, won his bet at the end of the year. He picked the Rangers from the get-go to pull out the whole thing.
Yep.
So, Code, what's your hot pick for the World Series champ?
It's like
this year,
giving
bro?
people the fortune cookie number that's going to win the lottery.
Is that right?
I don't want to lose.
Bro, let's take the casinos out of business, bro. You know what I'm saying? We got Kodee on our side.
Honestly, so last year I picked the Rangers. I picked the Rangers early. That was before all their pitching, health problems, and so I kind of lost faith in the middle of the year. And then they got hot again at the end of the year. So it worked out. And so baseball's a long season, but and everybody wants to say Dodgers this, Braves that.
Yeah, Dodgers are always good.
Yeah,
Never been good.
Bro, I have a weird feeling, and I hate to say this. I have a weird feeling the Yankees are going to get it this year.
Dang, it's like that.
I don't want to jinx it.
And I wasn't going to even say the Yankees.
Nah, I have a weird feeling. I just think it looks like they're having fun. Stroman's up there doing his thing, and they're letting him, because usually the Yankees are notorious for like
being very
suppressing
business. Bro, I saw that the other day. It's so funny. The Stroman, middle of the game, somebody hits a home run. They pan over to the dugout. Stroman's in front of the dugout with a T-shirt
on over it.
over his jersey. Yeah. And I'm sitting there going, same thing, because I'm a traditional very Yankees fan for years, since I was young. And so I'm like, what? Like what is going, I just would have
no, you just don't see it. They look like they're having fun. Then Soto's there doing his thing. He threw a guy out, hit a little flex, judges over there.
He's doing his little dance,
shuffles. And then you got the young guy Volpe, who obviously everybody thought highly of, but he started off playing pretty good. Like they just look like they're having fun.
Judge is good. Obviously.
The culture looks good. I mean, he's a stud.
Judge is Judge.
Yeah, and so I have a feeling Cole's not even pitching right now, and he's gonna come back, and everybody knows what he can be when he's healthy. Obviously a dude. Yeah. So I hate to say it because I really don't like the Yankees, but I just have a feeling you could just that energy, kind of like you get that sense with the Orioles too when you watch a game live. Yeah. Because we've been able to throw them live back there, and you could just see like the guys having fun.
Isn't that interesting? I remember when the Rangers were good a couple years ago, like back when Napoli and all them were like on the squad. And one of the things that I thought about was the same thing like you said, is like when you watch the game, you can just feel it. It's so interesting that you can just feel the energy, especially when a team's hot. You can just feel like how they're how they're talking, how the energy in the dugout, and like just on the broadcast, how the broadcasters talk, and just like all of it, like you can just feel like, and then you turn on like an A's game or something, you're like, oh,
yeah. No, have you seen on TikTok or social media that streamer called Sketch does like the Madden stuff? So it's like trending right now, and it was funny because the Diamondbacks are this way too. Like if you watch a Diamondbacks game, like they're kind of fun to watch. Like they're just a bunch of dudes being dudes out there just having fun. Well, this guy, it's funny. There's like this trend. It's like if you go up to your boyfriend and be like, "What's up, brother?" and you put your finger up, and then they do a response, and they're like flapping, they're going, doing the audibles because he plays Madden and he streams it on Twitch, and he's like doing all these, hand signals and stuff, performing as a streamer. And it was funny. One of the Diamondbacks guys, I'm pretty sure it was the Diamondbacks, hit a bomb, and then around second base, he was like. And then the whole dugout was like flapping at him. It's like you could just see them all, like the camaraderie and the guys coming together. And like, they obviously have watched those and talked about it. And like, made a big deal out of it. And it's like hit the little celebration and they're all doing it back. Like you could just feel that when watching that the guys are having fun. So
no, that's cool. Yeah, no, if I had to pick somebody, I mean, again, like you talked about, like it's so weird. It's so weird because, like you said, the Dodgers have had a hard time just getting it done. They've always had, like the last few years, they've had the best talent. Again, they just haven't got it done.
Yeah.
And also too, again, for a while there, I was like, man, are they going to get rid of Dave Roberts and like all the things, and like nothing against him. I think he's a solid. Again, just they've had a problem getting it done. Right. So that makes me also doubt the same thing. It's just like, man, I don't know if I could.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, they've been good every year in the regular season. Like that's not a question. It's just a matter of when it gets time to the point where the game really matter.
The team literally mimics Kershaw. Dominates during the year. Gets a postseason.
Yeah, which is so out there. He ain't gonna be back until like July, August. So maybe he comes into the playoffs and is just a beast in the playoffs because he doesn't pitch all year.
That's so funny. How old is he now?
Shoot, he's got to be upper 30s, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Right, he's been playing a long time.
Yeah, no. Well, he didn't sign for a while. I think he was.
Yeah, I mean, I do like the Braves. Again, they're pretty almost like identical team. That team's really good. Olsen's gotten so good.
Yeah,
he was good before, but he's gotten really good. Like last couple of years.
He's 36. Kershaw.
Okay.
36.
I thought he would have been
a little bit older. No.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you think about that just from like a acquisition and trade standpoint, or letting him go. It's like Freeman. Everybody was like, man, you lost Freeman. Oh, like Olsen's been pretty good.
Olsen's been nasty.
Again, I'm not taking anything away from Freeman because he's an absolute beast,
monster too. But Olsen is really like, he went because when they first signed Olsen, I'm like, okay, he's good. He's not Freddie good.
Yeah,
and then
he's doing the thing down there.
Right, and then again, shout out to another pretty good hitting coach. Right, these hitting coaches over there.
Yeah,
my boy Mags over there doing a good job.
Yeah. No. Did you? I was curious, since we talk about the business, you still wanted to go into the Boris thing at all?
Oh yeah, that was a big one.
Forgot about.
Yeah. That'll be a good one. The last subject maybe to go into is once you kind of open it up. So because I know some of the details.
Yeah,
so the tweet. Again, just in general, obviously, if you guys know, I'll just set up the initial part with this. Scott Boras, if you don't know, is like the biggest agent in all of baseball. Majority of the biggest players in baseball are all signed with Scott Boras. He takes a little fatter percentage, I hear, over other guys, but I also get it because he can leverage and does a lot of things. But he usually is negotiating some of the biggest. I mean, he's notorious. Like, he has his own academy, has his own things. Like, he's been very successful as an agent. But this last year, some things took a little turn this offseason. If you guys don't know, there was a lot of free agents that were having some problems signing going into the year. And like, again, there's still right now, there's some bigger free agents that just never signed or not on a team right now.
Mm-hmm.
So this year was pretty interesting. And so some of these were Scott Boras clients, and I'm going to let Kodee open this up because this has been the storyline.
Yeah. So this was the one I saw. I said, Scott Boras, free agents this off season, a couple of them. So at the time, this was 3/18. So some of this is different now, but had Bellinger, Bellinger, $27.5 million in 2024 on a 3-year deal with opt-out. Snell, $15 million 2024 on a 2-year deal with opt-out, $17 million deferred. Got Chapman with $20 million, 3-year opt-out. Well, there was one, I want to say, well, it was showing what they signed for and then what they turned down. And if I'm not mistaken, Bellinger, Snell, and Chapman all significantly ended with less than they were initially offered. They declined that offer and then went into negotiations and then ended up signing for a significant amount less. But I can't find that post where it had the numbers. But, I mean, those are big names. And then you had, like, Montgomery, who at the time wasn't signed, Jordan Montgomery, where he was asking for, a really high amount of money. Nobody was biting, and then ended up signing for way less. But I mean, you go Bellinger, Snell, Chapman, Jordan Montgomery, right there, and then I believe you got some guys that are still unsigned.
Yeah,
that are under his name too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's his guys are notorious for going to free agency and then hearing all the offers before they sign. This year, obviously, he's got Bregman as a big one this offseason that he has as well. But yeah, he's notorious for like guys going to free agency and like hearing, like wanting to hear what the market does. This offseason was very interesting with like, it feels like year over year, like players are signing later. And like, but the problem is like when there's big signs, like obviously like Ohtani like really messed things up this year. Like everything was delayed because obviously when you're going to offer somebody that much money that he was offered, obviously he came up with a pretty interesting offer of what he ended up doing. But like if you're going to sign somebody significant for that significant amount of money, it kind of backs up who you can sign. And I do think some of those players, obviously some of those guys that didn't sign, like they're looking for these bigger contracts. And then I also think just because of like where it was financially, and I think even some of the economy playing into some of these things is like what people wanted to sign for, because it's like, man, you sign a deal and that sounds like a really good deal at the time, and all of a sudden 5 years later you're like, all these other guys have signed and you're like, dang, that's really not a crazy amount of money. Like again, for example, it's like even when Trout signed, you're like $400 million, you're like, right. What in the world? And then Ohtani's like 700.
Yeah.
What?
No, it's crazy. Yeah, no, I couldn't find the exact numbers, but
yeah,
I know when I was looking into it, and it was a couple weeks back, Snell signed for significantly less than his first initial offer. So did Bellinger, and so did Chapman.
And JD Martinez, right?
Oh yeah, JD Martinez was another big one. Like millions less. Yeah. On all of them.
Yeah,
like millions.
And also too, some of those ended up turning, and some of those context wise were strategic, I bet, in the sense of like they probably were multi-year deals and they ended up signing for 1 year or whatever, right? So it's going to be less money because they ended up signing for 1 year more than they, than it could be. So I know that that's like a, a bigger, part of it as well, right? So I again, not to sit here and like harp on, like Scott Boras has been very successful on all the things, but obviously that being, an interesting storyline to see how that plays out, over the next couple of years too, as well to see. And also word around the block is that a lot of the teams and GMs, right, like Scott kind of bullies them a little bit, right? So a lot of people don't like dealing with him.
Yeah.
Right. On the block, which I get it. I'm sure he's a nasty negotiator.
Yeah.
Sure, he's got some of the biggest boys, like, you know what I'm saying? He's got some of the biggest contracts.
Yeah.
But again, along with that, sometimes he's also got other clients too that are not big time yet, right? And teams are trying to sign some of these guys, and then you don't want to have this bad relationship too either, because they're managing this relationship, because you want you want the bigger players. You want the guys that he has underneath too as well, and so you're negotiating other places. So I know that there's some interesting dynamics there, but that was definitely a bigger storyline because that hadn't happened to our knowledge, or at least it was big in the media wise.
It was a big deal. Well, I think also too what makes it interesting is, I mean, if you just really think about the culture of sports as a whole, you go to college and just how easy it is to transfer. Like it's just boom. Like I'll just go basketball because it's March Madness right now. I'm pretty sure it's now almost 2 weeks ago, North Carolina lost in like the Sweet 16, and immediately like 3 of their starters entered the portal. But by the next day, it was notified like boom, they're leaving, and it's like immediately they're gone. And then you go Alabama, who's in the Final Four. their best player transferred in this year from like a South Dakota school, like a smaller D1. And it's just like there's so much play and there's not as much. I'm committing, I'm loyal to you for a long period of time. And then you also got the side where the players, they want security. So they want these 10-year contracts knowing that, all right, my family's going to be here, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah,
right. So you got these two extremes.
Or they put the work in, or you put the work in and got significantly better, right? And then NIL, like let's say you're at some mid-major and then let's say LSU's like, yo, if you come here, I'm going to give you $500,000.
Yeah.
What are you supposed to do? Are they supposed to go like, oh no, I'm supposed to be loyal? First off, the coaches ain't loyal. They'll leave just as quick. You know what I'm saying? So along with it, it's just like they're making a move that's best for them, their future. There are those other things, and people that are just like knocking on the thing is like, bro, because you're not in that situation.
Yeah.
If somebody offered you that much money or whatever, and it was way better for you, like you're leaving, bro. Like, you know?
Yeah, and then you get to that point in the MLB where it's like, you've kind of made it like if you're making league minimum, you're still making like pretty good money, and most guys are making pretty. It's like a lot of them, especially at that point when they have families or a little bit older, like they value security too, right? It's like I'm sure. Again, I'm not trying to speak for them, but I would assume just from my experience being around people with families, they love knowing where their family's going to be and that security, and they're not moving
and
across the country.
Like to know that.
Yeah, they're not moving across the country every year.
Have to get up and move constantly.
Yeah, and so you got that where they like the security, but then it's so normal to just go one next, and just go chase the money too. So it's just an interesting, and I think that's probably too why it was such a big deal. Is those guys were seeking such big contracts, long contracts.
Yep.
And so it looks like this lump sum of money, like, $300 million, it's over 10 years. And then they signed for 2 years, $60 million. And they're like, whatever those numbers come out to with their.
Be better, for them too as well. It's like, okay, well, and also too, older guys, of course, are looking for longer contracts because they want security because they're getting older. It's also a time where they get hurt. It's also a time where their performance usually drops. It's a normal time, all these things. Well, the organization knows the same thing. They're like, well, we don't want to overpay for the production, underproduction that you're going to have or whatever. Like that's, again, they know the same thing. So there's this, that's where the negotiation starts, right? And that's where this stuff happens. So again, might be a lesser of a loss than what, we talked about because they end up signing for what they're signing for. So I can see that, really being a thing and some of that too. So Scott's been doing it for years, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Again, all the things.
Better agent than me.
Yeah, I think
let him be an agent.
Yeah, all the things, right? We're talking about him. I don't know if he's talking about me though. You know what I'm saying? So
maybe not yet.
Maybe not yet. You know what I'm saying? We'll see.
We'll get there.
Yeah, so I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, no, good pod. We're talking about that we think that throughout the season, having some kind of updates on like where the season's at and some of those podcasts too as well. Make sure you guys also send us DMs and stuff too if you got some ideas or some things you want us to talk about or to get our take on. So definitely would love that. But let me pray us out, huh? All right. Dear Father God, we just thank you so much for just all the things that you continue to provide, God. Even just the platform, God. Even just the mics that we're talking through right now, right? We don't take any of these things for granted. We know that you bless us with all of these things, and we just ask that you continue to bless everyone that is listening to this podcast, God. I want you to. I just ask of you, God. I ask of you to look over them, God, and just protect them and help guide them and let them hear your word and give them eyes to see and ears to hear, right, God? And I just pray all these things in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Amen. Tanky said amen.
Amen as well. Well, until next time, Farm System out.